On this episode of RevTalks, we're joined with Kevin Sturlaugson. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Howdy?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you so much for asking. And thank you so much for also being here on this episode of RevTalks. Can you give us a high-level overview of your consulting company and what you're currently building with that?
Sure, I definitely will, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on here and talk with you in technical terms and what my organization is doing. So, I have a company called Elevate Your Organization Consulting, and what the organization is designed to do is come alongside and help those organizations that don't have the defined strategy capabilities within their own internal people and partner with them and help them achieve technology solutions that they haven't been able to accomplish or need to accomplish and just didn't have a roadmap to get there. And I also provide fractional CIO and CTO services for those companies that need to bring somebody like me in more of a part-time role to help drive their technology strategy and decision making.
Understood. So I want to start with at least how you started, at least from going from the Navy to digital transformation. Was there like any sort of, what did military service install in you as a leader that 15 years of corporate IT couldn't have done?
Yeah, so the military gave me the what do you want to say, being that steadfast, being able to handle pressure, being able to handle complex environments and stay calm and also learn that you're not there to compete with the other because you got to help each other out. You got each other's backs and got to help protect each other. So it gave me the two mindsets of one, how to handle pressure and stay calm in that pressure, and then two, how to bring people along with me on the journey instead of trying to overtake them.
Wow, that sounds great. And so you launched Elevate Your Organization Consulting. What made this the kind of right moment, at least whenever you launched this consulting organization, what made this the right moment to go out on your own and after years inside of organizations?
Yeah, sure. So I had been working with the federal government, leading several different technology organizations within the federal government, and I'd hit that time where it was, I was eligible for retirement, but I wanted to go and make some impacts in other areas. So I decided to retire, and I just recently retired a few months ago, and then launched this company so I can go out there and help other organizations that need that type of expertise that I knew I could bring to the table to help them. I was federally recognized as being a strategic leader and creating high performance teams within the technology space. So I figured there was a good opportunity for me to help people achieve the same.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. I wanna ask you a little bit about artificial intelligence as well. That's kind of something that I love to talk about. How has AI, changed how you operate your business, just in a total perspective?
Yeah, so AI is really, it's become the buzzword over the last few years, right? About 3 years
Couldn't
ago,
agree more.
AI has been around actually for a long time, but now when you start talking about agentic and genetic AI, that's really been like the last 3 years or so has come into the main space. And I think, as we usually see in industry, people try and do that knee jerk and, hey, I got to have the new fancy, tool and capability. But now with all the different breaches and some of the things that have happened, people realize that there needs to be a better life cycle management and better planning and preparation before you put it into place, because it's harder to recover once you put yourself into that ether and get caught in a bad situation. So I'm seeing now people are taking, they can't pause too long because they still need that capability as quickly as possible, but they understand there's due diligence that has to be done before they get there. And a lot of times the business side doesn't understand that. So that's where business and IT now, before, technology worked in its silo, business worked in its silo, and they really didn't cross paths much, which made it where technology wasn't a good enabler for the business. But now it makes it where we have to come together and be level partners to help drive it. They need to understand technology enough to know how to build their business case. We need to have enough information to be able to develop the tool and the capabilities to align to that business case.
Wow. That's really interesting. Now, when it comes to whenever you started Elevate Your Organization, where did your first clients come from, and how hard was it to have that first conversation to really close a deal?
Yeah. So my first clients that I got were really through word of mouth, where I had contacts, like in LinkedIn, and they would reach out and say, "Hey, I see we both are friends with so and so. I have this, technology that I'm trying to assess and figure out what do I do with it, or how do I go after interacting with this technology capability. can I get on your calendar to get some consulting support? And, it just generically came through that avenue. And since then, I've done other things where I've done some few targeted ads through LinkedIn to bring business in. I've also created now a podcast that's just starting to get going on YouTube and on TikTok. And I recently published a book, authored and published a book to kind of talk about my high performance team side. And I'm getting ready to do a second book on how to become a technology enabler for business value. And I'm using those as also a feeder to help drive business, to let people know, hey, if you want to know who I am and what my capabilities are, you get a little bit of a taste, and then, let's talk and have me come in and help you out.
Understood. Yeah. So you're active on LinkedIn. You published a book. You have podcasts. You also have the certifications too.
Yeah.
How intentional is that content strategy, and which of those things that you just mentioned have actually moved the needle in bringing in business?
So far, most of the business that I've gotten is through the LinkedIn, because a lot of times it's who you know, or having those connective threads where people want to have that trust, because there's so many different consultants and so many different people in the field, that how do you know who's going to really deliver you something of value? So if you
Mm,
have that active person that they can relate to and trust, then that makes it easier for them to want to pull the trigger to say, hey, I need you because I know you can do it.
understood. So how does your sales process actually look like, just from like a first conversation to a kind of signed engagement? And what's the moment where most deals either close or fall apart when it comes to this business?
Yeah, so it usually starts out with an initial like 15 or 30-minute just discovery call. It's just to find out who you are, what's your culture, what are you looking for, because it has to be that right fit. And then understanding, what are you trying to achieve? Is it something that's simplified that only requires maybe one or two consultation, sessions? Then hey, that's probably pretty simple. But if you're trying to do a huge strategy deployment, development, deployment, and implementation, and you need that partner to kind of come and shadow you and give you guidance, that maybe a little more in depth. So then I try and work with them and try and go a couple different ways depending on the organization, how they contract and procure. And so it may be just a flat fee per hour, saying, hey, here's what we think the billable hours would be, and if we need to adjust the contract, we can. But I also like going after an approach where, let's talk about, I get a percentage of whatever the return on value is related to that consultation, or maybe you give me 3 to 5% of whatever additional business value you get, or what technology savings you achieve.
So there isn't no typical, is there like some sort of typical deal size, at least with new clients you sign on or projects that y'all take on?
So as of right now, most of the clients have been the small, just a couple consultations here or there. I've had a few people talk about upcoming. They may have some larger strategies that they need my engagement and support on, but they just aren't. They don't have the board ready to approve going after that and applying the funding that they need. So it's gone both ways.
Gotcha. Understood, understood. And is there a type of client you've kind of learned to walk away from in this business?
So it kind of comes back to where I had that first discovery call, right? You can ask some probing questions to understand the culture. And if they haven't addressed the culture situation, where they've tried these types of technology approaches before and they haven't been successful, and that's why they're still trying to find somebody that can be that successful, you do those probing questions to understand, is it really the consultant was the issue, or was it the culture? And if it was the culture and they haven't addressed it, then it doesn't matter who you bring in there. I'm not going to waste anybody's money just by saying, hey, I'll collect fees just because I know you're going to give it to me and you're not going to achieve anything. No, I want to help you achieve it and make sure you get value from bringing me on board. So I use those types of assessments. And then if they don't have a good understanding of what they're trying to achieve, then it's too vague, and there's no scope that you can really bind yourself around to help them drive towards outcomes.
Understood. Now, I want to go more into kind of your fractional CIO and consulting section. Is there some sort of thing that most C-suites believe about their technology strategy that turns out to be completely wrong once you get inside?
I don't know if I would say completely wrong, but they may have some invalid perceptions. And sometimes
Mm,
that just comes from, maybe they have a CIO, CTO, or somebody in their leadership, whoever their most senior person is in their organization, that maybe they don't have a holistic or broad depth of understanding of technology. They may have been a, network administrator their whole career, and just, grew up through the organization and got promoted, and they don't understand the other pieces. So when they're making their decisions, they only have one view, and it may not be driving accuracy when you talk about a whole holistic approach that technology needs to. The other is you may have somebody that in the organization that the leadership from a technology standpoint hasn't been able to keep up with the trends because maybe they have been trying to just keep afloat with their own organization, or they've been pulled into so many different directions they haven't been able to keep up with the trends, and therefore they need that person that can come in and say, here's what the current trends are, and here's how I've seen approaches that have put in place. And that's the other piece is some of those people, it's their first time, trying to achieve it, and they haven't, maybe they don't have peers or somebody they can engage with to say, have you attempted this already? What are the lessons learned that you had? What are the different ways we can have, attack this from? You may not have that information because they just don't have that engagement with other entities to drive that way. And so then able to bring in and help give clarity. So I wouldn't say they fail. They don't have a full, properly holistic view or understanding of what the capabilities and how to approach them.
Understood, understood. Now, I read on your profile and also online that you think that every organization is unique and a standard approach doesn't really work. So what does your actual process look like when you walk into a new client for the first time?
Yeah. So the first time I walk into a client, like I said, every organization is unique. You can take all your different, I mean, you have ITIL, you have COVID, you have CMI, you have all these different frameworks out there in industry that you can utilize, but you can't just plug and play them and expect 100% perfection of results out of them because every organization is different. They have different complexities. And so it's really coming in and utilizing a checklist to kind of go through, how complex is your portfolio? How engaged are you with the different entities? What is the culture like? And starting to drive those, what processes do you currently have in place, and how does your organization operate, and what's their ability to accept change? And you start mapping that out, and that helps you understand where are their gaps and which gaps can you address and effectively make change in those areas, and which ones have low value or there's such a historical viewpoint that you really can't create much change, and you don't try and attack those first, right? You wait till you show success in the other areas and then move on.
Understood, understood. I want to kind of shift this last part of the podcast to a little bit about your book. So, you published a book called At the Leadership Crossroads, Choosing Team Over Self. So, what exactly is that crossroad? And in your opinion, what makes so many leaders choose themselves without even realizing it?
Yeah, so it goes back to the old mantra, right? Of we're usually type A personalities or very strong competitive people when you get into the leadership realm. That's usually what drives us there, right? We're performance based people that we drive for the best performance. We want to win. And so maybe early in our careers, that worked well for us. It got us where we got recognized. It pulled us up where we were at. But at a certain point, you hit a stage where competing continuously at that level, you get stuck. You get into a quagmire where you no longer can be elevated any higher because, one, if you don't have people that you've brought up with you, they look at it and go, well, you've been achieving so well at this level. I don't have anybody bringing behind you, so I can't promote you because I need somebody to keep covering that area. So that's why you have to bring somebody up with you so you can sit there and say, I've already created another leader behind me that can take that, ownership of that space, and you'll be very successful. And that makes me available to be elevated to something else. And so you get that dichotomy. And then you also get to the next point of, do you want to be that person in the room where you're the smartest and you're the only brain that matters in there? No, 100 average brains are going to be better than one, you know, high achieving, brain. So I would take the 100 brains over the one any day. So it's about getting to that point where if you want to really unleash and unlock your capabilities, of your organization, you have to have more leaders along with you, and you have to be using a lot more input and feedback from others to drive towards better effectiveness and efficiencies.
Wow. Wow. I actually never heard that, thinking about it like that. You know, is there some sort of practical difference between a leader, who talks about high performing teams and one who actually builds them?
I think the difference that you would see if there's somebody that just talks the talk but doesn't do the walk, it'd be ones that aren't out there empowering their people, aren't willing to let them learn through failure. And when we say learn through failure, there's a control to it, right? You can't allow certain failures that are going to create such a negative impact to the brand, to the value of the company, to its bottom line. But there are areas where you can let them grow and learn from those mistakes, and as long as they don't keep repeating them, then great. I mean, most of us didn't come out knowing how to make these high end decisions right off the bat and stuff. We all had to learn along the way. Somebody had to give us that opportunity to learn, so is that person doing the same? And if they are, and showing that they're empathetic to, you know, at least partially, and willing to support their people by kind of mentoring and coaching them. If you see that those types of things, the empowering, the mentoring, the coaching, then you got a person that's really walking the walk when it comes to high performance teams.
Understood. Now, I kind of want to wrap up everything with this last question. Are there any specific goals that you have as we move through 2026 and going into 2027?
Yeah, so the goals I would say I have, the biggest challenges I see in most technology organizations still today that they have to attack from a strategy perspective. We already talked about, AI, right? A lot of them are trying to figure out for do I go for the agentic AI or the, LLMs? Do I have needs in the business where I need to drive those and implement those? But there's still a lot of problems with our current infrastructure. And so there's modernization that has to be done. Even to move to some of these LLMs and AI, there's modernization to move to cloud. There's a lot of modernization that has to happen. So it's helping organizations understand what is their current infrastructure and portfolio. Is there modernization that has to be done so they can actually start moving into some of these other new technology capabilities, increase their scalability, their flexibility. And then, if you move into the clouds, do you have the right FinOps or, governance structure in place to ensure that you can control your cloud spend and that you're moving the right things to the cloud or utilizing some other hosting service. So it's really those three things, helping organizations figure out how do they implement AI with a proper life cycle, with proper governance in place, with a good data management plan in synchronicity with it. And then where are you at with your modernization work? Can I help you out with your modernization? And, you know, if you need to go to the cloud, do you have the right governance and framework in place to control and manage that environment?
Got you. Thank you so much for those great answers. Now, before we head out, where can the audience find you online? Do you have a company website as well as your LinkedIn name?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I do have a company page on there, so you can look for Elevate Your Organization Consulting on LinkedIn. You can look for it on TikTok. You can look for it on YouTube. You can look for it in Google. I got it registered in Google Business, so you can find it in any of those formats. I also have a website that's www.elevateyour.com, and that's the way to contact me and even look at some of the documents or deliverables I've created to help drive thought process in some of those spaces.
Understood. Thank you so much for joining us on RevTalks again. I hope you have a great rest of your day, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Hadi. I appreciate it.
Of course.